Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shamali Gnanasena and I'll be hosting this event. On behalf of Center for Child Rights and Business, I warmly welcome you to the launch of Mother and Child-Friendly Seal for Responsible Business. The Center for Child Rights Business, Save the Children, and key stakeholders of T sector have developed an activity-based certification scheme to strengthen their commitments and meaningfully invest in mothers and children in the communities. This initiative has been making over the past 5 years, and today we are ready to launch. Let's commence this initiative by lighting the traditional oil lamp. I would like to invite following dignitaries to light the traditional oil lamp. Mr. Bhathiya Bulumulla, Chairman of the Planters Association of Ceylon, Mr. Johan Rodrigo, CEO of Horana Plantations, Mr. Senaka Alavattegama, CEO of Talwakale Plantations, Mr. Tanil Fernando, Director Rubber Marketing and Administration, Kalani Valley Plantation, Mr. Lalit Munasinghe, Executive Director, Bogavantalawa Tea Estates, Mr. Suranga Herath, CEO of English Tea Shop, Mrs. Iresha Dharmasena, Director Development, Ministry of Women and Child Development, Mr. Lal Pereira, General Manager, PHDT, Mr. Ranjan Vettasinghe, Director Program Quality and Development, Ms. Ines Camphor, CEO of the Center for Child Rights and Business, Ms. Ahila Thilainathan, Country Director of Center for Child Rights Business in Sri Lanka. I also would like to invite Mr. Vikrama and Mrs. Sumana Sena from the Labour Department to join with us. Mr. Vikrama is from the Ministry of Plantation Industries. So I also would like to invite Ms. Mallika from Sri Lanka Accreditation Board to join with us. So now I would like to invite Ms. Ines Camphor, the CEO of the Center for Child Rights and Business, to officially welcome you all and introduce the Center for Child Rights and Business. Over to you, Ines.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome our esteemed colleagues from the tea industry, government departments, UN and donor agencies, development actors, representatives from international certification bodies, and of course our strategic partner, Save the Children, to this event today. I would also like to welcome everyone joining us online. Thanks so much for making it to be here. So I'm waving to the camera because I hope that's where they see me. But I also want to thank all of you. I know coming here has been a huge challenge in this crisis, and I really, really appreciate that all of you went through the trouble to find some way of transport to come here today. It's really greatly appreciated, and of course we all hope and pray that this won't last too long. I'm thrilled to be here today and to kick off the launch of the Mother and Child Friendly Seal for Responsible Business. Particularly after not having traveled for nearly 3 years, it feels even a little surreal that finally I'm out in the world and can join some activities. I've been here now for a couple of days, and we visited some tea estates and we looked around, and just having these couple of days here in Sri Lanka reminded me again that if this was a perfect world, then every child would be born equal and could count on that the adults in their surroundings would ensure that every child gets their rights, that it would have the right to health, education, family, to play and recreation, adequate standards of living, and to be protected from abuse and harm. Unfortunately, our world's not perfect, and it's not the case for all children. Depending on what economic, social, environmental, and political circumstances a child is born will define largely to what degree a child will be able to benefit from its rights. Ensuring the rights of children is first and foremost the responsibility of governments. And as such, the degree to which children can benefit from their rights is often depending very much how good governments are at governing in their world. And that's good, particularly when governments run into trouble. When it comes to the economic circumstances, which bear an incredible weight on children's rights, the private sector gains a lot of importance. The private sector is the core engine of productivity, and as such really has the potential to raise well-being of households to a point where many of the fundamental rights of children can be guaranteed fully or at least in parts. On the other hand, if business is built on profit based on exploitative mechanisms, it will create situations where children are deprived of their fundamental rights. As such, business can either be a multiplying factor of child rights violation, or it can be a mitigator, and in the best case, an actual enabler of child rights. Understanding this, about 10 years ago, Save the Children decided to put into place the Center for Child Rights and Business. We started out in China with just a small team of 3 people. But in the meantime, and really with that goal to work directly with business to understand where is the business impact on children and how can business become this enabler of child rights? How can it become this force for good and for enabling child rights in the world? In the meantime, we have really close to global reach with projects all over Asia, even in Africa, even in Central and South America. And we're working with business to, for one, understand their supply chains better, particularly that's the buyers in Europe, in the US. But we also work directly with them to improve their corporate practice. We've been working with hundreds of businesses to improve their internal policies and processes, to ensure that their business behavior, or let's say work towards that their business behavior and business choices are choices that benefit children and children's rights. And we've also developed a set of very practical interventions within supply chains in particular. And I think what we're going to do today, or what we're launching today, largely goes in that part of practical on-the-ground intervention where we're working on improving the situations for workers and their families, and with that for children. As a result, and maybe we can go to the next slide, I have just a few numbers. We've reached nearly 70,000 workers. I think that was the end of 2021, so I hope it's over 70,000 now. We, for example, had over 10,000 children and parents that were able to spend their summers together. These were families that were normally living apart and hardly ever saw each other, only every 2 or 3 years. And because 91 factories decided to create child-friendly spaces, they enabled that coming together of over 10,000 children. And we've also had about 100 or more companies, and that's just a number actually from 2021, who then reported positive business benefits through this work. So it's work that definitely benefits children and child rights, but can also have a real sustainable and positive impact on the actual business performance. The center is really incredibly thankful today that we can be here, and we are excited that we can be here and part of this mother and child-friendly seal for responsible business, which I think is taking our work kind of to the next step. We're very thankful because we can build on the groundwork that was laid by Save the Children and Sri Lanka's tea industry. Many of you have worked on these topics already for over 5 years and put a very good basis in place that helps us to get started today. And obviously, particular during this tough time that Sri Lanka is going through, it seems more than ever important that we hold on to these kind of initiatives, that we don't get up, and that we are being resilient and strive for it. We are excited to know that all partners and member companies are really committed to make sure that this is not just another certification where we fill in some questionnaire, tick a couple of boxes, and write many pages of reports, but that this is actually an initiative that drives change on the ground, that really has practical, pragmatic, and direct impact for the workers and their families. This means that we want to allocate resources to create family-friendly workplaces that support young mothers with access to breastfeeding and daycare, that ensure working hours that are compatible with a parent's duties as a caretaker, that support access to high-quality education for children that gets the best out of them, provide teenagers in working age with access to decent work if they are looking for it, and most importantly, create a tea business that provides living income and living wages for all and allows families to ensure access to education, healthy nutrition for their children. In the center's role as both the developer but also the kind of responsible for managing of the SEAL initiative, the center will work tirelessly with all of you to make this happen, by ensuring that all parties show the necessary engagement, but also providing as much support as possible through hands-on training and guidance, facilitating access to resources by enlarging the membership for suppliers and buyers, and organizing outreach events together with development agencies, donors, and government entities. And we will ensure and push ourselves and all of the initiative's participants to do just a little bit better on every step of the way, and never letting our ultimate goal, and that is ensuring the fundamental rights of children, out of our sight. Thank you so much for being here today, and I'm looking forward for this launch. Thank you.
Thank you, Ines, for your valuable insights. Next, please welcome to the podium Mr. Ranjan Vettasinghe, Director, Program Quality and Development at Save the Children, to share with us Save the Children's work in the tea sector that has led to the mother and child-friendly seal for responsible business in this initiative.
Good afternoon, everyone. I actually took this responsibility last minute because our national director is not available because he's not well. I think most of you know Julian, and instead of him, that I am actually going to give a little bit of history, how we actually come so far. And I think unlike most of the other programs that we have done in Sri Lanka, I see that this program has evolved over the last 8 years to a level that I see that and flourishing a lot of partnerships and also creating a lot of sustainability. Can we go to the next slide? So like in the previous slide, we had actually a vision, Save the Children, to produce a different cup of tea. That cup of tea also consider the well-being and the best interest of children and their families. Uh, so we actually looked at how we can improve, like Ines said, the child protection, the maternal and child health, nutrition and early childhood education in the plantation sector. When we actually began all of this work, we did not actually talk about certifying companies or adopting standards, how we are going to actually work with the government and plantation companies together. We actually thought about how we can actually uplift the children and their families' lives. And we should thankful to all the plantation companies, especially the regional plantation companies who actually took that challenge with us. And there were a lot of challenges in the beginning for all of us because we understood little and they understood little about our intention. And so I think that's why I'm saying this program has evolved during last 8 years to a level that beyond any other programs that we have done in Sri Lanka. I think I should correct that number because actually over the last 8 years, Save the Children has invested for 4.8 million US dollars for this program, and especially during the first 2 years, during 2014 and 15, we did not try to, see how tea plantation companies improve the lives of women and children by themselves and how they are going to engage in partnership with us and how we are going to actually adopt some standards. We looked at how we can address immediate needs of plantation communities in selected areas. So that's where the most of the investment we actually build during plus 2 years to actually improve the healthcare facilities, daycare centers, ECCD centers, the wash facilities, so on and so forth. So that's where the most of the investment we put in. And then in 2016, I think 2016, Ahila, 17. So, but that change, the shift happened in 2016 where we started talking about more shared responsibilities, more partnerships, more looking at long-term changes. And as a result of that, with a lot of consultation, especially with Johannes there, I think me and Johan had a big disagreement in our very first meeting when we discussed about introducing standards. So it's a long journey. So that's how in 2017 we actually introduced the child protection standards. That's 10 standards. And Haley's was the first company to actually made that commitment, and then followed by many other the companies. And we are really thankful because it was a risk. It was a new thing that the plantation companies took over, and they really cared about the workers and their families and children. So I think that without that commitment, we wouldn't have been here. So I think most of the future was explained by Ines, and we are actually stepping in. For the last 3 years, we have been implementing child protection standards in 8 companies, and which had a lot of success. We were able to build capacities across those 8 companies, not just the companies, but also the communities, children. We have seen how children and their families understood the importance of education, health, nutrition, and especially protection. And that we see a big change from the point that we started in 2014. So we are trying to sustain this. We are trying to build more partnerships, and that's why Save the Children invited the Center for Child Rights and Business based in Hong Kong to come in 2018 plus to actually do a child rights risk assessment in the tea industry in Sri Lanka, where we actually understood most constructively where the challenges and problems are and how we can actually expand our partnerships. So this is the result of that. In 2022, Save the Children supported the Center for Child Rights and Business in Hong Kong to actually started They are local initiative in Sri Lanka, and we are thankful Lahila actually took that challenge in Sri Lanka to lead it. So this is where we are, and I congratulate everyone and good luck for all your efforts and initiatives for future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranjan, for your valuable insights. Ladies and gentlemen, next on the agenda will be the keynote speech. We warmly welcome to the podium Mr. Bhatia Bulumulla, Chairman of Planters Association of Ceylon. He also presently serving as the Director of Aitken Spence Plantations Management and Alpitia Plantations PLC.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I take this opportunity to thank the organizing committee for inviting me to deliver this keynote address. I am, as the chairman of Sri Lanka's apex representative for the plantation industry, the Plantation Association of Ceylon, here to share our experience and insights into investing into mother and children and the case for Sri Lankan tea industry. At the outset, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the Center for Child Right and Business and Save the Children for working with us to get engaged with Sri Lankan plantation industry. We are especially grateful to your outstanding work in driving progress around standard and enforcement of mother and child friendly plantations, as well as gathering information on the current progress made and identifying new opportunities for all stakeholders to collaborate and bridge the gaps in order to drive progress on this crucial issue. For example, Sri Lankan regional plantation companies that have already started working closely with the Center for Child and Business on initiatives such as the development and adoption of the 10 child right business principles has shown the value of engaging business with communities they are connected to in order to drive real progress on their shared goals. In the process, these programs are helping to establish common ground for further development because strengthening the communities we are a part of is what ultimately sustains the enterprises we are seeking to drive forward into a new era. Especially when comparing the regional plantation companies and its competitors, and despite all the challenges we face today, we believe the steady progress of Sri Lanka's tea industry has made in addressing many of the socio-economic disparities facing in the estate communities remain one of the biggest points in our industry and represent the examples which is worth emulation. At the time, we must acknowledge that despite all our progress made, we continue to fight the uphill battle. To understand the current issues faced by these communities, it is important to first understand the history of our industry. We went through 3 eras in the plantation sector. Firstly, pre-nationalization during the company days. It's called agency house model, established in 1867. Ran the country 105 years in the same model, where little effort was made in regard to social welfare aspect of our plantation community. Then came 1972 nationalization, which lasted for 20 years. when in 1992 the estates were subsequently handed over under the lease for management for private companies. Over the past 30 years since the privatization, the estates have evolved into their current modern structure. Today, the Sri Lankan tea industry is primarily comprises of tea smallholders, which is about 63% of land allocated tea cultivation is 62% of the total production. Meanwhile, the regional plantation companies, which amount to 33% of the land, brings 36% of production, and the state-owned company plantations have 4% with 2% of production. RPCs approximately have over 165,000 workforce out of the resident community of 1 million. Going into one of the criteria that we have to look into in this aspect, although we manage only 165,000 people, there are 1 million people residing on the estate. So it's a task for plantation companies to implement certain things, as we have little control over non-workers on the plantation. In order to have an efficient and factual, meaningful discussion about the issues connected to these communities, it is essential first draw this distinction given to depending on which sector we focus on. There is drastic variation in standard of living and availability of formal system for ensuring the well-being of the community at large, and particularly well-being of the women and children. While basic institutions were established during the colonial era in order to provide essential healthcare services to the sector, formal effort to evaluate standard across the key socio-economic indicators for communities in the estate sector were first commenced during the nationalization period, and only really started to gather momentum during the last 30 years under privatization. They are the Plantation Human Development Trust, a tri-party body comprising employers, that's union, employers, and government representatives. That's charge of implementing the social development programs to enhance the quality of life of 1 million plantation community in estate managed by RPCs. Accordingly, it is important to consider that 2019 oversight into the medical facilities of the estate community was previously managed and administered by the RPC, but was subsequently handed over partially to the states, which now hold sole responsibility for medical and education in the sector. Nevertheless, RPC still work close partnership with Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education, in addition to other relevant public and private organizations, in order to continue building on the immense progress made on evaluating socio-economic standards. Common misconception that we see in community about the Sri Lankan plantation sector, that the communities we are connected to is that they are among the most deprived in the country. Here is where the distinct outline from above comes into stark relief. First, we must note that our primary responsibility is private organization change with deriving profit out of these assets, change to our management. RPC employees remain our primary focus, despite the fact that we strive to ensure the initiative are made available to the entire 1 million strong community, even though only approximately 10% is directly employed by us. In this regard, RPC workers receive fully secured, guaranteed lifetime employment with mandatory minimum 3,000 days work per year from 18 years to 60 years. Our employees are completely free agents, and there's no compulsory of any sort of them to report for work, although they reside in the estate and enjoy all the benefits and facilities provided. I will list few benefits that our workers are enjoying: EPF, ETF, gratuity, 20 days paid holidays, 14 days sick leave, attendant bonus, profit share, maternity leave, 3 months maternity holidays, free maternal and child care on the estate, allowance for milk powder, flour and rice, free issue of medicine, and I have a list of things to talk about: school escort, elders home, health and sanitation, water, etc., etc. On estates, we have 61 hospitals, 323 dispensaries, and 1,474 child development centers, caring for 250,000 families. As a result of the collective efforts of successful government, RFBC managed and NGOs linked to PHDT and Save the Children, as well as many others, we have been able to constantly expand the quality of coverage of these services. At present, this includes the following maternal and child care activities. Maternal care, we see that every born child is have a birth weight over 2.5 kilograms, and pre-pregnancy, nutritional status, maternal status are checked by the government and estate medical staff. Midwives visits homes, and transportation is provided to the hospital by the plantation. Child care, health and education for children provided at preschool development centers in 1,544 child development centers by the trained child development center officers. We provide nutritional growth, free food, education, and free feeding, midday meal, school books, bags, shoes, etc., etc. In the education, the outcome has improved drastically, although there too much more work is needed, especially with recent development in remote education as a result of COVID pandemic. Disparities in education outcomes increase, and extra support will be required to mitigate these issues moving forward. All of this is not avoid the fact that there is much more work yet to be done to bring the communities in party, which is rest of the country, but similarly illustrate the unprecedented improvement made so far. However, in the context of Sri Lankan's current and unprecedented economic woes, we are now in face with much greater challenges, as extremely scarcity of food, fuel, medicine and other essentials have begun to set in now just in the region higher level of poverty, but even in the most highly developed region of the country. All of the above serves to illustrate a few basic points. Firstly, that structure that carefully targeted intervention into health, education and other key infrastructure and amenities works. These already drastically improved in the life of a generation of estate sector communities. Secondly, it is the fact that especially the context of Sri Lankan current and unprecedented economic woes, it's great deal that the progress is now in danger. Lastly, is most important, we must consider the fact that until Sri Lanka regain the economic stability, we face a period of prolonged uncertainty. In such an environment, it will also be case that lesson learned from our experience, investing in social welfare broadly, and special emphasis given to invest in mother and children may now need to be scaled up to not just to cover Sri Lanka's plantation sector, but to the entire Sri Lankan low middle income communities that are becoming increasingly vulnerable to the poverty. Before I conclude, I would like to leave you with few more small but promising insights that might light the way ahead, so that there are still a few reasons to be hopeful. Our shared experience working to improve housing, health, sanitation, together with improvement of early childhood education, are showing clear community-wide positive results. Our work to drive enhanced nutritional status through behavioral changes approach targeted primarily at mother and child is also gathering momentum through pioneering new initiatives. Given the financial capacity to drive social welfare is going to be heavily restricted in the difficult months and potentially years ahead for Sri Lanka. It may well be case that whenever possible, we should seek similar bold and creative measures to drive progress. In conclusion, I would once again like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the Center for Child Right and Business and Save the Children for the initiative taken to guide tea business on a path that incorporate the well-being of women and children across their business. Business entities who enroll in the SEAL initiative will initially take a pledge to develop an action plan on strengthening initiative for women and children and will be issued mother and child friendly seal for responsible business. The most valuable community on the plantation company is the human capital. We believe in ensuring the well-being of women and children living along the plantation community as they are the key influencing for sustainable development of the industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bulumulla, for your valuable insights. Now I would like to invite Ms. Ahila Tilainathan, Country Director, Center for Child Rights and Business in Sri Lanka, to introduce the Mother and Child Friendly Seal for Responsible Business. Over to you, Ahila.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is with great pleasure that I'm here to introduce the Mother and Child Friendly Seal for Responsible Business. So basically, improving women and child rights is a process that takes time and requires a sustained effort and involvement of all stakeholders. It's not just one entity's responsibility alone. And children's rights business principles was developed 10 years ago by 3 agencies, UNICEF, UN Global Compact, and Save the Children, on the premise that the private sector had a key role in promoting and protecting child rights. And the principles basically provided the framework for businesses in doing so. Investing in children and women indeed does bring a return of investment, both for the company and also for the country. And especially in times of crisis like the current one, private sector has to transform itself and be more people-centric, basically if it wants to retain their own staff as well as sustain business and productivity. And the SEAL initiative has evolved over a period of time, first through trying out pilots and seeing the various efforts made by business entities, the government sector, as well as development agencies, and realizing that there was a need for us to to provide business entities with guidance on how the investments they were making on the ground was having an impact on the women and children, and assessing that and also guiding them along an improvement pathway. So and to be able to measure those results and communicate to the wider public. So basically, catering to that need, the Mother and Child Friendly Seal for Responsible Business was developed, and it provides the guiding tool that supports business entities to assess and communicate the mother and child friendly practices implemented by their own business operations and that of their supply chain. So basically, the SEAL initiative has 4 key objectives. One is strengthening the commitment and the capacity of business entities to create a very family-friendly tea supply chain, as well as encouraging business entities to meaningfully invest in the children and their families in the tea communities, and also to support public-private partnerships between government and private sector entities, as well as development agencies, in investing in overarching issues that need collaborative efforts. And finally, to add a value addition to the Sri Lankan tea industry in demonstrating that the entire supply chain is moving towards a transformation process towards a family-friendly supply chain, and making the name in the world for the Sri Lankan tea industry in this respect. So basically, that was the key objectives, and that is why the SEAL initiative for the Sri Lankan tea sector, I just want to mention that initially it's for the entire supply chain, but in the tea producer group, we are starting with the regional plantation companies and the private estates before we roll it out to the smallholders sector. And at the same time, this is also applicable for all the downstream businesses, the exporters, the brands, and also the brokers involved. Next, I would just like to present briefly what are the core requirements under the SEAL initiative. So basically, there are 5 core requirements. The management capacity, which looks at human resource management and how the business entity is investing and implementing family-friendly workplace initiatives, and how they have set up functional mechanisms that support the identification and addressing of gaps and cases of women and child rights violations. And the staff capacity core requirement basically looks at how the business entity has invested in training of their own staff and the awareness for their employees on areas of women and child rights well-being, and how they have prioritized these areas into the organizational culture of the company. The community engagement core requirement looks at how the business entity has supported initiatives in the tea communities themselves, and also for example, raising awareness of the importance of the first 1,000 days of a child, etc. And how the voice of women and children in particular have been incorporated into these initiatives. For example, if we, in most of the estates that Save the Children has previously worked in partnership with the companies, a village child development community system mechanism has been set up. In these, children are very proactive in voicing what the concerns and risks to children are within their communities. So that is one key aspect that we are looking at under community engagement. The 4th core requirement basically looks at performance and impact, and what are some of the measuring tools that are in place to measure the impact of the initiatives that the company has invested in terms of scope, impact, and reach. And finally, we move to the selected improvements core requirement. So basically, this looks at the child rights business principles and the current status of the business entity in each of these areas, and what are the initiatives that they are prioritizing, and also areas that they are going to prioritize for their action plan. Can we move to the next slide? Yeah, perfect. So basically, the core requirements, this is for the tea exporters and the brands. And if you see, it's almost the same core requirements, except for one key difference. The core requirements for the downstream businesses looks at the the supply chain practices, basically in how the business entities are supporting good supply chain practices along their supply chain. Are they promoting premium price for those who are investing in initiatives, family-friendly workplace initiatives, or are they directly investing in those initiatives in the ground? So basically, this is a summary of the core requirements. I'll also just quickly run through the process. So basically, there are 8 key steps. So the first step is, if any business entity is interested in joining the SEAL initiative, we welcome our expression of interest, and followed by an orientation that will be provided by the center. And following that, there is a child-centric capacity self-assessment that has to be undertaken by the business entity, looking at all those 5 core requirements. At this point, I want to mention that that's not going to be, it is a measurement tool in terms of how the company assesses and identifies areas that they wish to address in their action plan. So that's the purpose of the capacity self-assessment. And then the company develops an action plan and monitoring plan in consultation with children and their employees. And followed by that, once that is submitted, the center will review, give feedback and recommendations as well, and issues the pledge for the business entities whose action plan has been reviewed and approved. And then the business entity starts implementation of that action plan. And for the new business entities that have enrolled, within the first year, we will be carrying out the center will carry out an assessment, and based on a child-centric impact assessment, and issue the seal for the business entity. And after that, this seal will be issued, renewed on a every 2-year basis based on a year-on-year improvement. So what we are looking at and encouraging business entities is to strengthen and deepen their impact, scope, and reach as time goes by. So that's the whole purpose, and to communicate those investments and the results of those investments directly on the people. So this is basically the 8-step process of the Mother and Child Friendly Seal. Okay, I also wanted to mention, basically, because the entire SEAL initiative, as I mentioned, has been developed initially through all the pilots that we have done, but also in a lot of consultations that has taken place over the past, I think, more than 1.5 years. We have been working on this, and a lot of you have been part of those consultations. And the advisory committee for the SEAL initiative currently are these stakeholders: the chairman, Mr. Bhatya Bulumula, the chairman of Planters Association of Ceylon; Dr. Roshan Rajature, the managing director of the Haley's Group; Madam Dilmini Herath, the Additional Secretary of Ministry of Women and Child Affairs; Ms. Iresha Dharmasena, the Director Development, Ministry of Women and Child Affairs; Mr. Lal Pereira, Director General of PHDT; and of course, Mr. Julian Tellapad, National Director of Save the Children. And we are hoping to also expand this advisory committee as more and more entities join us on the SEAL initiative. Okay. And I just would like to end this. We are also launching the website. So if any of you, those who have joined in person and all those who have joined online, if you would like more information on the SEAL initiative, the website is live and you can access that and contact us for any further information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ahila, for introducing the SEAL initiative. Ensuring well-being of children and women is a responsibility of multiple stakeholders. That's why the center has reached out to consult key stakeholders in the tea supply chain to develop this SEAL initiative. Next on the agenda, we have organized a discussion forum. This will be moderated by Ms. Buddhini Vitana, who is the Senior Technical Advisor, Child Protection and Child Rights in Business at Save the Children. Over to you, Buddhini.
Thanks, Shamali. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm pleased to be moderating this discussion today on Mother and Child Friendly Seal for Responsible Businesses. To start off, I would like to kindly invite the following panelists to the table. Mr. Johan Rodrigo, Director and CEO of Horner Plantations PLC. Mr. Suranga Herath, Founder and CEO of the English Tea Shop. Mrs. Iresha Dharmasena, Director Development, Ministry of Women, Child Affairs and Social Empowerment. Mrs. Ines Kamfer, CEO of the Center. And Mr. Ranjan Vettasinghe, Director Program Development and Quality at Save the Children. If you could kindly come and take your seats at your assigned seats. Thank you. Okay, so before we start this panel discussion, I would like to introduce the speakers because they're all very, they've been instrumental in the tea industry as well as the government, etc. So let me just start by introducing Johan. So Johan has worked with Save the Children for a very long time. I think one of the earliest advocates for mother and child friendly plantations. And Johan is now the Director and CEO of Horner Plantations, which is part of the Haley's Group. His company was one of the first to adopt a child protection policy for the company to ensure that children who live in the estates are free from violence and abuse. He serves as a director at the Ceylon Tea Museum, the Plantation Human Development Trust, and a committee member of the Ceylon Planters Providence Society and the Estate Staff Providence Society. So thank you very much for accepting our invitation and being here today, Johan. Right. Next, we have Suranga Herath. Suranga is a founder and CEO of the English Tea Shop. He launched the English Tea Shop in 2010 to bring high-quality, ethically sourced tea to people all over the world. Passionate about creating shared value, his business has built a sustainable livelihood for farmers across 20 countries, giving them access to the skills and investment to make them more entrepreneurial. Suranga has been working with the Center and Save the Children for a few months now and has demonstrated his commitment for the mother and child-friendly seal. And right next to me, we have Mrs. Iresha Dharmasena. And Madam Dharmasena is the Director of Development at the Ministry of Women, Child Affairs and Social Empowerment. She oversees the planning and implementation of many action plans of the ministry, as well as the National Child Protection Authority, Department of Probation and Child Care Services, and the National Secretariat for Early Childhood Development. Prior to her appointment as the Director of Development, she was a Deputy Commissioner at the Department of Labour and has served in the Sri Lanka Administrative Service for more than 12 years. So thank you very much for the panelists for being here today. In addition, we have our familiar faces, Ines and Ranjan, who are here to actually to participate in the Q&A session after the panel concludes their responding to the questions that I will put for them, so that the audience can actually ask and clarify any questions or any concerns that they have about the mother and child-friendly seal. Okay, so with that, I'm going to start the round of questions. Johan, I'm going to come to you first. For you, well, it's kind of the same question for Johan and Suranga. Johan representing the producer group and Suranga representing a brand. So Johan, as a tea producing company, why did you decide for your company to join the Mother and Child Friendly Seal? And what is the vision that you have for the company that you think will be achieved through this commitment?
Thank you, Buddhini. If I may take your time, before we came into this, the seal or the certification, I just like to take you back a little as to how we started all this. It was way back in, I think, 2016 or 14, when Save the Children Sri Lanka, with in partnership Save the Children Hong Kong, wanted to get a premium for our teas in Sri Lanka, because they thought that our workers and the plantations are doing a hell of a lot of work and was not recognized for its produce. So that's how this whole thing started at that time. And we wanted to uplift the workers through the extra money that we got. And way back in 2016 itself, when Mother and Child Friendly Tea started, it was mentioned at that time, the ultimate goal would be someday to have a social certification as such. So that is how it all began. And I was hooked in some way or the other. And we began our humble journey at that point. Okay, now why have we done this and where are we going? Okay, being a member of the UNGC, our companies, most of our companies here are members of the UNGC. And we align to their principles as well. And one such is the rights for the children and the mother as well. So taking our produce forward, taking our produce to the world, I think we have to have ourselves certified and to be a world leader in getting our produce to be known and recognized with the Mother and Child Friendly Seal. We have to be relevant in what we do. We have to be socially responsible. And as an ethical tea plantation, I think our industries as well, we have to do that. I must mention, most of this work was done by we have something called the PHDT, its chairman is here, its Director General is here, which was done, which was formed in 1992 when the plantations are set up. And they did all this work that we do right now. 90% of this work was done, and they still continue to do. Halfway through, or the latter part, I think it fell off a little. Our focus was taken away, and there was a vacuum for wanting of funds. And then we had to get on with it, and then we invited most of the NGOs to come and work with us. So that's how Save the Children, we invited Save the Children, and this is something that the certification part is something that the PHCT cannot do. So I think Center for Child Rights has taken it up, and Save the Children has helped us immensely in putting the foundation stone, as it were. So I think that's a good way of going forward, and that is one reason why we are going forward, and we want to be ethically certified and socially responsible tea company.
Thank you very much, Johan. That was really great to hear, and I think you will continue through this certification a lot of the great work that you have started over the last few years. Thank you. Suranga, I'm going to come to you next. So it's really the same question, but as a tea brand, why did you decide for your company to join this initiative? And what's the vision that you have that you think will be achieved through this commitment?
Thank you. Thanks to Save the Children and Child Rights Center for putting this together. I don't have a history as long as Johan working with you guys. So I think it was a couple of months back when Ahila made an appointment, came and saw us. And it happened to be a perfect coincidence because we've been, a little bit like Johan, if I go back in time and reflect on why we launched English Tea Shop way back in 2010. To cut a long story short, it's a people story. We wanted to take a brand out of Sri Lanka that was promising to build people better. Right? Whether it's the agriculture that we were building up, we went organic, not because we were experts of organic. We went organic because we realized that way we will carry the burden of agriculture ourselves. And that's exactly what we had achieved over the last 12 years, building organic farming communities, not only in Sri Lanka, but elsewhere as well. And then our own people, we don't have 1 million people working for us like in the RPC sector. We have 300 employees working in our factories in Colombo. So we've done a plethora of things following models like creating shared value, going 100% open book management. Again, if I get into that, it becomes a complex discussion. So to cut a long story short there again, we are now 30% employee owned. And majority of our employee owners are shop floor workers. We have like 217 ESOP owners as we speak, and out of them, a good 170 are shop floor people, owning substantial shares. So we've, I think, done quite a lot of things in building those people up, both our people and the farming, communities that we work with. But if you, look at our sustainability reports, for example, over the last few years, we've promised quite a lot of things. We've done quite a lot of things because, we've been, we were born into the tea industry, so we kind of connect very closely with the mainstream tea industry and we work with them very closely. And we were, we're inspired by what, people like Johan, Bhatia, entire RPC sector, the smallholder sector does. I think there is quite a lot of things that we can exchange from each other. The one thing I would borrow and I proudly quote from the mainstream tea industry is the way they take care of their people and the burden they carry. So we've been promising that we will do the same thing with our organic, farming communities. I think we've done amazing things from, bringing them economic, inclusivity and building them up on that side. But there is quite a lot of things that we can kind of do in terms of, especially mums and children and their education, their health, and the whole inclusivity piece. So that was one thing that we are looking at, and also our own people. Because of this whole employee ownership thing, we work with our people very closely, and we have meetings, and we even have board representation, from our employees. So we realized, as COVID ended, the new world we are stepping into, Sri Lanka's own economic crisis, I think something Ahila alluded to a little while ago, is that the private enterprises will have to take a massive, responsibility, a role in taking, measures that we never thought we would be taking. So that's exactly what we have been doing over the last so many years. But then when Ahila made that contact, we were, in the middle of a leadership team discussion, a series of discussions looking into what our next challenges are. And then we realized that it's going to be hard for us to run some of the programs ourselves. While economic inclusivity is a cakewalk for us because we built the platform and our people are owners of our business. When we spoke to our people specifically, just to quote one example, over the last few weeks, the biggest fear that our people have, it is not only the shop floor, it is even going up to the executive level, is the future of their children. And some parents, some moms and even fathers, so I would expand this to parent and child, when we apply it in our place, the fear they have about their children, it's not about the economic woes that much, it's more like the future. And some kids have not seen a school for 2 years, right? Have had no education for so long. So we're now talking to Ahila to take this, take another step, because I didn't think it even took 2 weeks for us to finalize and agree that we are going to sign it. But I've pushed her, and then we kind of designed another program, a pilot program, which is a child benefit program, which will see about 150 of our kids, starting from our own employees, but we will take it down to the farm levels as well with our organic farming families. It starts with a monthly stipend as such, something like 3,500 rupees at current cost levels to each child. But then we're kind of fine-tuning it to see whether we can cover not only education, which is in the mandate, but whether we can start with a pre-screening of health and nutrition, and then kind of get parents to be looking into all three aspects. And then we are looking into, one of the things I liked about the project is the psychological first aid that will be given to all of our people. I think that is one of our crucial issues. That's something I will never be able to solve on our own, or our leadership team will not be able to do it on our own. So there's quite a lot of hope. The seal we get today is not just, a stamp or a certification program. We don't really go behind certifications. To be honest, personally, I hate certification programs unless there is something substantial, something that pushes us. So we are in the middle of B Corp certification as well. Again, a very different certification program where you look into plethora of things and you establish your goals and you achieve them, and there is tracking and monitoring. So I'm trying to build these things together to build people better. So that, in a nutshell, is why we are here. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Suranga. I think, reflecting on what you said, there is a huge drive, and rightfully, as Ahila mentioned, the kind of response at the private sector or any kind of entity at this point of crisis has been kind of articulated a lot relating to social protection, because that is really the need of the hour, and we know that the government systems are not really going to be able to provide that social protection and social security to people. So I think with this framework of the child and mother and child friendly seal, trying to kind of, I suppose, look at it more broadly and to include really relevant and timely interventions is something that is really important. I think, we can always say what kind of interventions that you can take forward, but as the context changes, to be able to be sensitive to that and take proactive action is something that we would really like, I think, for all the partners to see. So thank you very much for that. Now I will turn to Mrs. Dharmasena. You come from a very different background, so you're representing the government sector and obviously our greatest partner in child protection and child rights, the Ministry of Women and Child Development. So, Madam, as a decision maker for children and also as a member of the advisory group of this initiative, how do you think the Mother and Child Friendly Seal will enable better public and private sector collaboration and partnership? What role would the government play in working towards achieving children's rights through this particular initiative?
Thank you, Buddhini. First, I would like to thank the Center for Child Rights and Businesses for inviting me for this special occasion. Actually, this is a timely need, and this is the right time that this initiative is launching, because that we know the country is suffering a lot with this economic crisis. This certification for mother and child friendly seal certification will benefit in two ways actually. First thing is with this in this crisis situation, the companies will get the benefit to work for the women and children. Now here onwards I spell women because we can't talk about children without women. So women and children, they can do whatever the social development activities on behalf of them for the well-being of women and children. And on the other hand, if there is a seal that is it's telling the mother and child friendly seal, that there will be more demand for our tea. And you can get a good price for tea with this certification. So in that two ways, we get benefit, our community get benefit, as a whole that our economy get benefited. When it comes to mother and child friendly certification, basically I think there are two things we have to ensure. The first and foremost, the important thing is we have to protect and promote the rights of the women and children. And the second thing is you have to, the companies has to implement that social development activities to empower women and children. When it comes to rights, even though our constitution has guaranteed equal rights for women and children, irrespective of gender and age, but in the field we see that this equality is not seen in that context. There are some marginalizing gender stereotyping and so many discriminations for women. When it comes to children, there are so many child labor and less school attainments and the basic requirements, rights of children, the nutrition, then love and affection, they do not get those things. So actually, as now actually we are in a critical situation. Government institution, we have less budget compared to previous years. Today, we also earlier to come this meeting, we had a discussion with UNICEF as well, because we can't afford the ongoing programs due to the shortness of allocations. I think that the government and private institution can do a great deal of thing to betterment of the children and enhance their livelihood. We know that they find it difficult to find actually food, shelter and fuel, so they are struggling to purchase those things. So as the ministry, we have launched a lot of programs that also plantation companies can contribute. I am actually delighted to hear that there are a lot of interventions done by the plantation companies according to the presentations that I see. So I'm very happy that they have done a lot of with Save the Children. We do a lot of work with Save the Children as well. So I think we have to have better collaboration with government officials and the plantation companies to achieve this goal. This is very important. We think it is domestically important to safeguard these rights and all this empowerment, but it is very important when we consider about that concessions like GSP Plus. Last 2 months back, we had to face that European Union questions that whether we have adhered to that the conventions of CEDAW and CRC, Child Rights Convention. So there are recommendations that we have to adhere those conventions. There are so many recommendations that we have to work to implement in our country and included in our laws. So that we, very satisfactory level, we answered those questions. So I have an important concern that in that CEDAW report or CRC report, we gather all the information only from our government institutions, what they have done on behalf of that women and children. So I think that private entities are doing a great deal job. So I would suggest this to incorporate in that. That is good thing. And also, when it comes to estate sector, there are so many compared to other communities, there are so many many problems, that less school educational attainment, teenage pregnancies, and domestic workers. That is because due to the less education. I think the main reason for this vicious cycle, the parents are less educated, then the children are less educated. So somewhere we have to break that vicious cycle. So there is a saying, if we educated a girl child, is it like an investment? That is because if a girl child is educated, when she become a mother, that her children also she may influence. Mother is the influencer than a father, I must say. So she can influence her children to study. So as a grandmother, she influences her grandchildren to study. So the generations improve in education. In a state sector, we must consider about this education factor. So that is the way to a bright future of children. So in last couple of years, we saw that there are a lot of domestic workers, very tragedies due to the poverty and the less education level of parents and all. So having said that, I would like to say that we have a setup already in place in each divisional level. Our officers are there. You can get any help in this launch. And actually, according to Buddhini, when I was talking with her, I got to know that a lot of officers working with that estate companies. So I would like to request all of you to get assistance from our officers. There are officers of Child Protection, National Child Protection Authority, Probation Department, and Early Childhood Development Secretariat. So all of you can get help of those officers when you are doing any program or activity in your estates. And further, I would like to ensure that as the Ministry of Women and Child Development, we are always there to advise you in strategic advisors, to give technical advisors. Or this certification system is in this initial stage. When you upgrade this and into promote this, you may be some monitoring mechanism or something. So we are always there as the ministry to help with you, and we are willing to work together with you for the betterment of women and children of the nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Dharmasena. I think that kind of really encapsulated the kind of government commitment that we would like to see, that we have seen over the past few years. And especially, I think something that I picked up is how we as a country monitor the situation of our children's rights. I think you mentioned that right now it's only the government entities that do the data collection, but there's so much of work, good work done by civil society, by the private sector, that really needs to be recognized. And I think, like, if there is any kind of measure to, build a mechanism to enable that, I think that we can really demonstrate some of the good work that we do in a holistic way. So thank you very much, Madam, for that. Okay, so my questions to the panel are over. However, we have a few, I think about 15 minutes. Is that okay? Yeah, 15 minutes for any questions the audience might have. We welcome questions from both the in-person attendees and our online participants. Just a difference though, if you are an online participant, please put your question in the chat box. And if the question relates to the certification, to the Mother and Child Friendly Seal, then Ahila from the center will respond to you in the chat box. But if it's for anybody else in the panel, then it will be taken by the panel. In-person attendees, please put your hand up, and obviously you can ask any question from any of the panelists here, including Ines and Ranjan, especially if you want to know a little bit more about the certificate, the scheme, the seal, and anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. With apologies for not understanding the tea sector entirely in advance. Back at work, so I work at a place called UNICEF. We always keep wondering why the tea sector never ever developed so much where the staff are given a lot of credit and a lot of leverage, even though they are one of the most income earning industries in Sri Lanka. Maybe it's a larger question, but mostly why haven't the tea sector or the women, the rights of women, or not even the rights, like the pay scale have not increased, and why do we always look for outside support? Is there a gap?
Okay, thank you. Sadhana from UNICEF. Yes.
Sadhana from UNICEF.
Johan, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, yes, we understand there is a gap between the plantation community and the normal folks, or the town folks, as you would call it. It's mainly due to the, well, I'll be frank, it's the politics of Sri Lanka. And they were always left behind, and the plantation management companies had to deal with it all alone. A good example is Save the Children coming in. And when we started this, we had a tripartite agreement with the government officials. The government officials looked at the plantations like we were aliens, right? And they never knew that we were doing so much of work. Once they were exposed, they found that the plantation companies were doing more work than what the government was doing for the other people. We have not been, or we have not trumpeted ourselves enough, and we have not showcased what we have done. Yes, there's a long way to go. But from what we were in the plantation companies, like Bhati said, when for 106 years, when the Europeans took over, and they invited the Indian Tamils to come and work, they were in a bit worse off situation. There was a famine and hunger in India, and they were brought over, and for them it was good at that time. But it stayed at that. We never evolved, and we never went up. They still lived in the barracks, they still lived in the line rooms. So that was something that we had to break. Even now, we have housing, not that we don't have housing, not that we don't have water. There's a huge amount of money being poured into the plantations. But we find the people severely dependent on the plantation management, right? We call it womb to tomb. You come for master, what you come in the morning, you have a family problem. The family problem is the manager's problem. So it has gone to that extent. So slowly, gradually, we're slowly breaking away from it, and we are giving more onus to the plantation worker to be self-sufficient. That is why we have the self-help houses. That is why we are given so much land to them. That is why we are invited the NGOs. The NGOs are doing a tremendous job of work. My friends are here. They are from Fairtrade. I know what they are doing. I know I'm highly involved with them. I know what Save the Children is doing. There are so many other NGOs working in. They're trying to uplift the lifestyles and make a better lifestyle for the plantation workers. So yes, I agree. And yes, we say there is a gap to fill. It will take time, but we are getting there. And some of the indices, we are improved a lot, especially on children and mothers. We have improved hell of a lot from where we were, purely because the PhD got involved. We have a body which looks after the welfare status of the workers. They have done a tremendous job. So I think it is not known to the outside world. So that is one of the major things we have. Even right now, the people in Colombo doesn't have fuel, doesn't have food, doesn't have things, right? Plantation workers, believe me, we bring the rice to the doorstep, we bring the flour to the doorstep, we make sure that the people are fed, we make sure that nobody goes hungry. With my partners of NGOs, we are giving chickens to make sure that we get eggs. We have started inland fisheries to make sure that we have proteins. We started the vegetable cultivations to make sure they have vegetables. So we will, the plantation managers and the plantation companies will ensure that nobody goes hungry in the plantations. So that's our goal, and I invite all the NGOs open-heartedly and the government officials to please come and work with us, because we are a community left behind by everybody. That we have to acknowledge, and that's what we are behind. That is a part of the certification. That is why we are going behind NGOs. That is why UNICEF or anybody is invited, and that is why we are seen differently. Thank you. I hope I have answered.
Thank you, Johan. Right.
Thank you. First a statement, please, and then a question.
Sure.
An aspect of the work you're doing, I think, was not recorded. Pardon me, I was late. Today is the auction, and have to Selati as well. I am Anil Cook, chairman of the Ceylon-Tea Roadmap, which is a initiative that brings together all stakeholders. I'm happy to say that more and it's a tremendous amount of cooperation, leadership, guidance and help that we as a body receive from Ayla and your team, and that is of tremendous value. I mean, a lot of these things, this kind of dialogue that we have is very productive and benefits all stakeholders. So thank you for that. Let me place that on record. I would like to address my colleague on the CTRM roadmap, Suranga Herath. And I'd like him to perhaps share with this audience today a new initiative that we have put together with the likes of Johan Rodrigo and many of you in the room about a sustainability framework that we have developed and we are taking to the world. So I think it would also track all of this in a meaningful way, and I'll leave that to Suranga. Thank you.
Is that all right? Yeah,
Absolutely,
thanks.
please.
Thanks, Anil. So yeah, it's a very complex subject, but knowing that we are up against a race, or in a race against time, what we've done through the Ceylon-Tea Roadmap 2030 initiative is to firstly bring together a diverse set of people, right, from one corner of the tea industry to the other, brands, plantation companies, small holder sectors, the private factory associations, mostly the leadership, in these different value chain or supply chain members, and then, kind of connecting their entire, employees and stakeholders. So what we're suggesting and what we have done so far is to move away from single taglines for the Ceylon tea industry and to develop a comprehensive system which incorporates mother and child and quite a lot of other areas. So we're looking into three key pillars. On one hand is the social pillar, the people development pillar, the ethical pillar. On another hand, the nature, the biodiversity, the environmental pillar. And then we have obviously to continue, being a profitable business, the economics, the productivity, that's sort of a pillar. So we brought together a pool of people, and then we've kind of identified where we stand against these pillars. And then we are establishing a system where we have a roadmap, a set of objectives for 2030, for 2025, broken it down to like annual goals, and collecting, like we're starting from where we are, because once I also got involved with people like Johan and all the other RPCs, I realized the amount of work, what Johan mentioned today, a little while ago. It's amazing amount of work, but I think it's all like, blurred because of the way it's implemented. It's different from one corporation to the other. It has to be different because you got to differentiate, you got to stand out. But what we realized is you can't run away from the fact that Ceylon tea is now, it's united in a way through the business model. Because unless we move away from this existing business model and break down, the commodity styled auction system, which we shouldn't do at this time, we need to really improve the credentials of the industry in a credible manner. So what we are trying to do is not only assess the work that is already going there on these three pillars. We've developed, Johan's team has in fact put together a pilot phase where we developed 30 drivers, 87 metrics, and we're taking stock of what we are doing now, what we should be doing, and really critically looking into the gaps, starting from living wage, for example, everything, because we should really honestly understand that there are gaps. While there are great things being done, as you correctly mentioned, there are grave gaps. So we are appreciating the gaps, and we want to be the first to go to the market, showing the gaps and showing the roadmap to resolve those gaps. So I think it is probably, from what we are hearing, the first time in the world an entire agriculture platform, or an industry getting together, whether it's the smallholder sector or the plantation sector, pooling all of our resources, bringing in technologies like blockchain, for example, building databases to capture data at minute level, at real ground level, and then be able to communicate them in a meaningful manner. So there is quite a lot of objectives. It is not just about taking stock of what we are doing now. We are setting very hard objectives, and then we are designing roadmap. We'll have a permanent team, looking into this. But why we are taking this model now to the world is to ask for partnerships, not for money, for partnerships, for expertise, for knowledge, because we want people to get inspired with the thought that the industry is getting together to realize and to appreciate, to understand that there are gaps, and we work together. This is where I think people like Fairtrade, Mother and Child, Rainforest, B Corps, all sorts of people can come together and contribute, and also make sure that what they want to see in the industry, or especially in a global South context, can be put in place, and we start looking into numbers, looking into real meaningful improvements, start communicating it. It's a very holistic program, so I don't know whether it was clear enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suranga. And I think is that an open invitation for all entities who are, relevant in this field and who have a stake in this roadmap, in the sustainability framework, to join hands with you? Okay, that's good to know. Right, do we have any final question? Yes, madam.
I'm Chandrika Tilakaratna from Sri Lanka Accreditation Board. Actually, I'm very happy that for the initiative taken to introduce a kind of value addition for Ceylon tea. Right? So as per my understanding, I think it's a product certification. Right? That seal is some kind of a product certification mark to be displayed in the retail tea pack which goes to the consumer, right? So which we will be able to get a good perception about Sri Lankan tea, that we care about mother, child, and their welfare as well. So actually, when it comes to this certification, actually, what is the mechanism? That is for my information, my knowledge. I am just asking. So the certification body in this case would be the Center for Child and Business, as I understand. So they have developed set of criteria where they will evaluate the plantation companies to see whether actually they comply with the certain requirements or the laid down criteria. And then after that review or assessment, only they will be given the license to use that product certification mark, right? So will it be displayed at the retail pack, or what is the practical mechanism? There is a product certification international scheme called ISO 17065. Right, where we do product certification for organic products, then maybe the schemes like Global Organic Textile Scheme, then the organic food products, right? Likewise, then eco-labeling for some other products, right? So actually, I would like to know, for my information and my knowledge, how does this practically, operate in the field?
Can partly answer the questions. For start, we are at the start, right? And today, the majority of the companies who will sign the pledge are the producers themselves. So they're not the consumer-based brands at this point. So we're still going to work out how the seal is going to be used on packaging. But what is clear as those producers who are signing the pledge right now, as well as the English tea shop, will be able, if they are approved from us at the beginning stage, that they will be able to use the seal on their products, on their information. The plantation can put it on their gate. They can put it in their information brochure, etc. Now, the way it's going to be accredited, or as you say, monitored. So we wanted to be very careful that we're not creating just another standard, where we're creating a huge monitoring apparatus around it, which at the end will not change the lives of the workers, but just create a couple of jobs for auditors and for people who report on it. So we wanted to be very careful that that's not happening. So if you look at the standards, it's very clear that the demands that we're giving to the signatories are going to be about showing us how they're continuously investing and continuously improving the situation for mothers and children, and I would say families and children, but particularly their employees and generally in the tea estates. And so what we're looking after and what the seal is going to kind of approve is this continuous improvement and this continuous investment. So we're not putting a standard and say you have to have minimum, I don't know, minimum 80% of your mothers have to have taken a training on XYZ, because that will just create this whole monitoring, assessment, ticking the box mentality. What they have to do is understand where their weakness is, reporting their weaknesses transparently to us. And transparency is going to be, I would say, the number one standards, right? There will be an issue if we go and visit them and do our own assessments, and we see that what the information that we received from the plantation is not reflecting what they informed us about. That, for example, would be an issue and potentially a reason to pull back the seal. But if we get transparent assessments of what the challenges are and then followed up by clear action plans, maybe a company who will join this seal now will, in their first assessment, find 10 or 15 areas of improvement. They will not be able reasonably to solve those 10, 15 improvements in the next year, particularly not at this time. So we just want the company to be transparent and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then the seal management and the supervisory board are going to look at, are they following up on their action plan? Are they implementing those actions that they promised? And do those actions have the impact for the children and the women that we aspire it to be? Now we are starting this process. So at the beginning, it's the Center for Child Rights and Business, and we have a separate kind of assessment team that will look at that. But I think as we go ahead and be in our working plan, probably in 2-3 years, we'll probably have a separate, totally independent assessment unit, which we will also need in order to get the seal accredited amongst certification accreditations. So we're looking into that, but we're just taking it step by step as we want to test this in the first years with the people who came out now and took this bold step to be part of that. And then we'll see that. But I just want to remind us, and thank you so much for this question, that it's not a standard that we're assessing. It is a commitment that we're assessing. And we hope that with that, we're turning around. I think you said you hate certification scheme, and so do I. So when we first started talking, I was like, nah, I don't want to do certification. And particularly for that reason, I mean, a lot of certification do a good job, but I just felt just to be another one out there, just another stamp, just another tick the box, is not going to work. What we need is, and so we really built that whole thing because we need this action and on the ground. So that's how it's going to work. Now, in the second phase, more brands will join. And then the question that you raised on exactly on which tea box the seal can be on, etc., will have to be considered, and we will have to learn. And we have a great advisory board that will help us along the way with those questions so that we are taking the right decisions. So I don't have all the answers, but hopefully a little bit more donation.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the explanation. Actually, as you told, so it is a step-by-step process. So today, I think we can initiate with whatever the available resources and available the current status. And with time, definitely you will be able to improve your system and bring, I mean, within about 2-3 years' time, with your commitment of both parties, the plantation sector and as well as the other people who contribute to the scheme. So you will be able to make it a fully independent one day. Thank you for clarification.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for that question, Madam. I think we have come to the end of the time allocated for the panel discussion. So I once again thank all our panelists, Johan, Suranga, Madam Dharmasena, as well as Ines and Ranjan for being here and for taking part in this panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the moderator and all the speakers join for the forum discussion. Now, so we are delighted to announce the first 6 companies on board with us for signing off the SEAL initiative today. So we have 6 companies who have expressed their interest and the commitment to enroll for the mother and child-friendly SEAL for responsible business. So I would like to call the list of the companies. Those are Alpitia Plantations, Talawakale Tea Estates, Horana Plantations, Kalani Valley Plantations, Bogavantalawa Tea Estates, English Tea Shop. I would like to invite following dignitaries to the head table for the ceremony of signing the agreement for enrolling mother and child-friendly SEAL for responsible business. Mr. Bhatia Bulumulla, Mr. Senaka Alavattegama, Mr. Johan Rodrigo, Mr. Ranil Fernando, Mr. Lalit Munasinghe, Mr. Suranga Herath, and Ines Camphor on behalf of Center for Child Rights and Business. Thank you very much for the head of these companies for their leadership in taking this important initiative to ensure the well-being of women and children. So I'd like to take this opportunity to invite rest of the regional plantation companies, tea exporters, tea brands, and tea brokers to reach out to the Center for Child Rights and Business for more information to express your interest in enrolling for this SEAL. With that, let me share the concluding remarks. As many of the speakers highlighted, investing in children and women will bring return of investment both for company and the country. In terms of a crisis like current one, private sector has to transform itself to be more people-centric if it wants to retain staff, sustain business productivity. So again, to recall why the SEAL is important for businesses. The SEAL supports businesses by providing the guidance framework to identify the areas child rights and women's rights and making it more family-friendly workplace. Also, to being able to publicly demonstrate your business entity's commitment to improve children's and mothers in the tea supply chain, and to build your reputation as a business entity to work as a continuously improving conditions for mothers and children. Also to be recognized as a business entity that demonstrates best practices in investing in children's rights and women's rights and contributing towards sustainability of the Sri Lankan tea industry. So we are delighted that as of today, we have 6 companies which signed for the SEAL initiative, and there are 3 more plantation companies have already expressed their interest to explore more and enroll with the SEAL initiative. So I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to all the stakeholders who were with us in this journey so far. So I would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to Save the Children Hong Kong for investing and supporting in this initiative from its pilot stage at Save the Children Sri Lanka over the last 5 years to its current phase of launching it as this SEAL initiative. Also, all the staff at Save the Children Sri Lanka who have contributed over the last 5 years in different ways to the evolution of this initiative. Also, I would like to thank Save the Children Bangladesh IT team for their immense support in developing SEAL, the website for SEAL initiative as well as online tools. Also, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the advisory committee of the SEAL initiative, Ministry of Women and Child Development, Planters Association of Ceylon, Employers Federation of Plantations, MD of the Hales Group Plantations, then Plantation Human Development Trust, Save the Children, and Ceylon Tea Board as an observer. I also take this opportunity to express our gratitude to the 8 regional plantation companies with whom we piloted the child protection policy, education and health, nutrition initiatives over the last 5 years. That has contributed to the initiative evolving to become the SEAL initiative today. Last but not least, I would like to thank the children and families who have participated in this initiative over the last 5 years and who will be participate in the future as well. Also, the participant at this launch event who joined with us in person as well as through online, including government institutions, donor and development agencies, interesting and collaborating investment partners, as well as all other media personnels and individuals who has a commitment for the well-being of women and children. So if you want further information about this SEAL initiative, please visit our website. You can see it on the screen. So it has been launched today, so you can get required information through that, as well as anytime feel free to contact us at Center for Child Rights and Business. So ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the closure of the formal segment of today's event. We would like to request you all, the signatories, to stay for a group photograph and then join with us for the refreshment and networking. It was a pleasure to have you all in this launching event. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you.